PerspectaWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday, May 20th. It continues to be kind of a cool and breezy weather pattern for much of the northeastern part of the nation, all thanks to a strong, cold Canadian high-pressure system sitting over the southeastern part of Canada. That high-pressure area is producing a persistent east to northeast flow of air into the mid-Atlantic region, and anytime you get the winds blowing off the western Atlantic in the springtime, it can lead to cooler than normal conditions. The ocean really bottoms out in terms of temperatures during the month of March, and any kind of an easterly flow of air in April and even into May usually results in below normal conditions, and that's exactly what we have experienced here in the mid-Atlantic region. Maybe some 10 degrees below normal today, for example, for afternoon highs generally in the mid-60s in the D.C., Philadelphia, New York City corridor. Should be more like the mid-70s this time of the year. Before we take a closer look at the next few days, I want to kind of focus in on the tropical situation. We'll kind of look ahead over the next week to 2 weeks, what we may expect to see on the tropical scene. We, of course, had our first tropical system of the year. Arthur became a tropical storm. We talked about the potential for an early start to the tropical season, and it looks like that is going to happen. Of course, we had Arthur, and after maybe a week or so of a break in the action, I think there may be more activity again in places like the Gulf of Mexico, southwestern Atlantic, maybe the Caribbean Sea as we get into the early part of the month of June. So maybe a week to 10 days of kind of a break in the action, but by the time we turn from May to June, we have to watch out towards the Gulf of Mexico, for example, and we'll kind of focus in on that over the next few minutes here. First of all, I want to start off with a teleconnection index known as the MJO, which stands for the Madden-Julian Oscillation. It really tracks a tropical disturbance that propagates around the world in the tropical area. And experience has shown that depending on the phase of this particular Madden-Julian oscillation, it can lead to certain types of weather patterns in terms of temperatures, in terms of precipitation. And this time of the year, it gives you a clue what kind of tropical activity there may be in the Atlantic Basin or the Pacific Ocean, for example. And basically what we're looking at here is the MJO forecast by the European model right here in green, and it kind of rotates counterclockwise in this particular format here. And the active phases for the Gulf of Mexico, for the Caribbean Sea, southwestern Atlantic, this time of the year, really are these phases right here when this Madden-Julian oscillation rotate through phase 8 and then into phase 1 and 2. And here's the prediction by the European model shown in green. You see for the next maybe week to 10 days or so, will not be in those active phases. But then as we turn into the beginning of the month of June, right in here, it starts to roll through those increasingly active phases of 8, 1, and 2. So I expect maybe the next week or so will be quiet in terms of the tropical scene, places like the Gulf of Mexico, the Bahamas. But after that, if the MJO is any kind of an indicator, and it usually is, it looks like activity may ramp up again, let's say around the turn of the month from May to the beginning of June. Well, another key to the whole tropical situation, of course, is sea surface temperature anomalies. We always focus in on that, not only this time of the year, but really year-round, like to focus in on sea surface temperature anomalies. This map comes from the Canadian Meteorological Center. One of the main factors for the upcoming tropical season is the development of La Nina in the central part of the Pacific Ocean, the tropical part of the Pacific Ocean. This is the equator right here. This particular black line here that goes from left to right is the latitude 0, the equator. And look at this right here. We have some colder than normal waters now showing up at the surface. The last few weeks, last couple of months actually, we've seen temperatures below the surface, let's say in the top 300 meters of the equatorial Pacific Ocean, with below normal waters. Well, through the process called upwelling, that colder water from underneath can rise up to the surface, and indeed that seems to be happening here, supporting the idea of a La Nina right in the heart of the tropical season. And La Nina with these colder than normal waters here in the equatorial part of the Pacific Ocean generally favor tropical activity in the Atlantic basin, right in this region right here. One of the reasons is that there tends to be lower wind shear in the Atlantic basin when there's a La Nina out in the equatorial part of the Pacific Ocean. Less wind shear in the tropical Atlantic generally leads to more activity. In addition to the effect on wind shear with La Nina, we also see sea surface temperatures still above normal in parts of the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean Sea, and the western part of the Atlantic Ocean. Now, one of the things I want to show here, kind of an interesting, is the change in just the last 20 days to these sea surface temperatures. This is for today, May 20th. Let's go back 20 days right here. Notice this area right in here. First of all, we're looking at the very beginning of the month of May to today. Watch what happens here in the equatorial part of the Pacific. Obviously, quite a significant increase in an area below normal temperatures, colder than normal conditions, certainly increasing since the beginning of the month of May. Another area of interest here, we'll have to monitor this. Notice the colder than normal conditions up across New England coastline, the western part of the Atlantic Ocean off of New England, all the way to south of Greenland. And over the last 20 days, it kind of shifts a little bit to the south and maybe intensified a little bit. That whole area of, again, below normal conditions up here in the northern Atlantic over the last 20 days. And we'll have to keep an eye on this, because if this continues to intensify, continues to expand maybe southward, it could have an effect on the tropical season in the Atlantic Basin, at least maybe the second half of the tropical season. So two areas of interest we're closely monitoring. First of all, the development of La Nina in the equatorial part of the Pacific Ocean, and we're really focused in on that in the tropical outlook that you can find on the Perspecta Weather website. And we'll also monitor what's going on in the North Atlantic. A lot of below normal sea surface temperatures here. Quite interesting, quite a change from what we had certainly over the last couple of years, and we'll continue to monitor both of these areas closely over the next several weeks. Well, I want to take a quick walk through the 500 millibar height anomaly forecast from last night's 0Z run of the operational GFS. I always like to look at the 500 millibar height anomalies when it comes to tropical season. One of the favorite patterns for seeing some tropical activity, or at least raising the chances of some tropical activity in the Gulf of Mexico, the Southwest Atlantic, is if there's very strong high pressure situated over New England or southeastern part of Canada. From that position, it really opens the door for some tropical waves to move from the east to the west into the Bahamas or the Gulf of Mexico or the Caribbean Sea from the tropical Atlantic. And so it's one of the things I like to look for as we move farther and farther into the tropical season. This is as we start off the day right now on Wednesday morning. Notice a lot of high pressure ridging right across southeastern Canada right now. That extends all the way down to the surface. That strong surface high has kept the mid-Atlantic region on the cool and breezy side for the last few days. And of course we had Arthur over the last few days that moved up over the Outer Banks and is now out over the open waters of the Atlantic Ocean with high pressure ridging over south central and southeastern Canada. Now let's move forward. First of all, this upper level low finally kicks out by the end of the week, albeit in a weakened state. Here we are by Friday morning, starting to kind of open up, and really tends to weaken, but here we go. Here it is, the remains of it by Saturday morning. It does weaken, but it should be enough of a system still to produce a much higher chance for showers on Thursday night in the D.C. metro region, and then on Friday in Philly, New York City, and D.C. And that threat of showers can continue into Saturday, the upcoming holiday weekend. It does look like after a shaky start to the weekend on Saturday, we'll probably see some decent improvement, decent weather in the Mid-Atlantic region on Sunday. and also on Monday, Memorial Day. Now let's keep moving forward here through next week, and we have the general high pressure ridging over the southeastern part of Canada here through next week here, and then we're getting into now the latter week of the month of May, and again we're watching this high pressure ridging in that kind of a favorable region here across northern New England and southeastern part of Canada. This is now getting into the middle part of next week, and still a lot of that high pressure ridging, so that is something that we'll have to watch for underneath this area right here, this area over the Bahamas, over in the Gulf of Mexico. It's kind of opens the door for some tropical activity. So not only is the MJO eventually going back into more favorable phases of 8, 1, and 2 as we end the month of May and go into the month of June, but the 500 millibar height pattern tends to be somewhat favorable as well. It tends to go away a little bit as we get this brief time period of an upper level low, but then it kind of fills right back in. Here we are now to the beginning of the month of June, and high pressure ridging will extend all the way back into southeastern Canada. Right at this stage here, we're all the way now into the first week of June. So a pretty favorable overall pattern in terms of 500 millibar height anomalies for some potential tropical activity down across the southwest Atlantic, maybe the Bahamas, the Caribbean Sea, the Gulf of Mexico certainly. Maybe a break again over the next several days, but as we get to the end of May into the early part of June, we'll have to watch for some more tropical activity. Well, let's now wrap up with the surface forecast maps from last night's operational run of the GFS at 0Z. First of all, here it is, that strong high pressure system sitting and spinning over northern New England. Winds flow clockwise around a high pressure area, and right here you see this isobar pattern. Again, winds tend to go parallel to these isobars, and that is bringing a wind off the ocean into the mid-Atlantic region. It's still relatively cool western Atlantic, and that's leading to below normal temperatures in Philly, DC, New York City, and maybe 5 to 10 degrees below normal, and also throws in some moisture from off the Atlantic Ocean into the mid-Atlantic region, hence lots of clouds around. Not all that much in terms of rainfall, for sure, yesterday, today, and even into the day on Thursday. But then that upper level low that again has been sitting and spinning over the Tennessee Valley finally starts to kick out, albeit in a weakened form. It'll kick out and increase chances of showers, first in the DC metro region on Thursday, and then on Friday in Philly and New York City. Here is what remains of Arthur right now, continues to move away from the East Coast. So let's now move forward here, and high pressure still showing some control here in the Mid-Atlantic region as we go into the day on Thursday. Then finally, watch this area of precipitation associated with that weakening upper level low. It finally moves enough north and east to increase the chances for rain in DC by later Thursday night. Into the day on Friday, it'll expand all the way up into Philadelphia and New York City. Not necessarily a major rain event by any means, but an increased chance of showers by Thursday night, especially on Friday, and even into Saturday in the DC, Philadelphia, New York City corridor. And once it arrives here with that low pressure over the New Jersey coastline by Saturday morning, it'll kind of continue to bother us here in the Mid-Atlantic region in terms of some clouds and maybe some occasional showers even into the day on Saturday. Again, not a heavy rain event, not an all-day rain event, but not a particularly nice day. However, the good news is that high pressure takes over again to the north and east. By the time we get to Sunday, it looks like there'll be improving weather for Sunday and the Memorial Day holiday, with at least partly sunny skies in the Mid-Atlantic region, in the northeast U.S. Still maybe a few degrees below normal again with that high pressure to the north. And again, we're supposed to be in the mid, maybe in the upper 70s this time of the year. Probably not going to be quite that warm on Sunday and Monday in the I-95 corridor. Not with high pressure off to the north and east. Now let's just kind of quickly go through next week. And here we are Tuesday now, and then into Wednesday, and I'm just kind of focused in on this area here just to take a look at what the model is suggesting in terms of tropical activity. Again, we looked at the MJO and the 500 millibar height anomaly pattern. And here we are now getting towards the end of the month of May. This is the forecast map for May 29th. And this is a time period where, again, MJO, 500 millibar height pattern suggests we may get some more tropical activity down across the Gulf of Mexico or the Caribbean Sea, maybe the Bahamas. And here we go. GFS has a system down there, and actually signs of another system over the tropical part of the Atlantic Ocean. Something we'll have to watch for. And here's that high pressure starting to build not only here over the Great Lakes, but into the southeastern part of Canada, and a little bit of a low pressure system down over the Gulf of Mexico right at the end of the month of May. So that's kind of a quick look ahead to the tropical scene. Again, maybe relatively quiet over the next week or so, but then activity very likely could ramp up again down across the south, places like Gulf of Mexico, the Bahamas, in or near the Bahama Islands, and the Caribbean Sea, the southwestern Atlantic, towards the latter part of May and the beginning of the month of June. For the next couple of days, still cool and breezy weather pattern dominates the northeast U.S. That's it for now. For PerspectaWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.